Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Astel by Ari. I tried to film this same episode like 4 times, and 4 separate times there was an issue. So we're gonna try this one last time. So guys, before we get into it, I want to thank you guys for coming back. I moved back to school. I am already in the swing of things for Welcome Week, which for any of my viewers who know what it means to be the director of a Welcome Week for an entire college, you know that things get insane. And so I want to thank you guys for your patience, for your diligence, and honestly just for the loyalty to my page, because you guys are the reason that I do this, and it makes me feel so loved. Thank you. So getting into it, I'm going to try and keep this as short as I can, because honestly this is something that I could talk about for a very long time. But I really want to talk about representation as far as African American women and men go in the media. My friend Khadija, this beautiful dark chocolate woman, brought it to my attention that she actually wanted to hear an episode about colorism and the representation, or the lack thereof, I should say, of Black women and the spectrum that we're on. You would be amazed at the spectrum for people in general, to be honest. But if we're looking specifically at Africans and African Americans, our range as far as looks, skin color, genetic, all of it is completely and utterly, there are millions and millions and millions and millions of combos, just like everybody else, right? Yet, for some reason, Hollywood and the media only seem to think that about the lighter end of that spectrum should be noticed, or should be shown, or should be really displayed and marketed even. It's very, I'll be honest, as a young girl growing up in the media, growing up watching the types of media that I did, I can honestly say that I didn't grow up seeing dark-skinned girls on television, in movies. I didn't grow up seeing them as the pretty popular girls. I didn't see them as the primed and primed and the takeover of the world type. I didn't see them as, I didn't see any of that. Oftentimes, when there was a dark-skinned character in any TV show or movie that I watched, and again, guys, I was born in 1995, so I'm not like an ancient dinosaur. I grew up seeing girls that were my complexion and lighter. And, that created a whole complex for me and girls like me, because we actually had the opportunity to see people like us on screen. And for some reason now, it seems like Hollywood and the media have made us the face of Black people, and that's not okay, considering the spectrum that make up Black people. We have some of the most beautiful women and men on the planet, and I'm not saying this as a race thing. I'm not saying it strictly in the terms of super Jesus. I'm not saying this in the terms of being superficial. I simply mean that in the terms of representation, we are not given nearly enough display as much as we should. I'm sorry, but when it comes to white actors and white actresses, they'll take on any role, because who else is going to play a white person but a white person, it seems. But for some reason, when we're talking about characters of color, if they're darker than like me, it's a problem. It truly creates an inferiority complex among children, among teenagers, adults as well. So we were really, what brought this all on was the fact that, so Khadija is doing this like book challenge. I think she said she wanted to read 20 books in 6 months. And so far she's read quite a few already, and the one that she read that sparked all this was called The Hate You Give. There's a movie coming out about it. And it's about a young Black girl whom she grows up, not necessarily in the projects, but she grows up in a more urban area, as some would say. She goes up in a more urban area. However, she goes to school in a predominantly white school, okay? So she kind of lives 2 separate lives, and not separate, but separate enough for her to know that there's a way that she has to be at school, and there's a way that she can be at home. She has the freedom to be who she is and what she wants to be when she's at home. And long story short, she loses a friend to police brutality, and she is front and center for it. So this girl who goes from being, a well-liked, black dot on a white piece of paper at her high school is now faced to become, unfortunately, everything she's feared. She has to become an activist. She has to become aware of the real world that she lives in as a person of color. And Khadija pointed out to me something very interesting, and I can't wait to read this book because I can't wait to see how much it creates such a very different effect than the movie is going to, simply because the original character of the book is a dark-skinned girl. She's dark-skinned. And for those of you that would love to paint this as like, well, why does it matter? Why is it this? Why is it? It matters because the movie coming out, it's a mandala. And for those of you who don't know, she's the girl who played Rue on Hunger Games. She's a wonderful actress. She's an amazing activist. However, for some reason, Hollywood doesn't seem to think that a dark-skinned girl was proper enough to play the role that was written for them. It's a missed opportunity for those that need more representation. And for those of you that think just seeing a black face on a screen is enough, now that we're in 2018, it's not. We can't just see a bunch of light-skinned people all the time, because that's not all black people are. That's not even remotely, it's not okay, it's not accurate, and it's honestly one of the most dehumanizing things that we can do as a species, because it basically says that the narrative past light-skinned people isn't there. It doesn't exist, and it shouldn't exist. And that's not true. There should be no... In 2018, let me put it this way. In 2018, there should be no issue with creating bringing the characters to life that were actually meant to come to life. I understand that, you know, there's politics in Hollywood and all that crap. Not saying that I really care about them, but I will at least acknowledge them for the sake of my argument. But arguments and politics aside, at the end of the day, there's not just one narrative of black people. And I mean black people as in Africans. I mean African Americans. I mean those on the islands. I mean everywhere. There is not one singular narrative of black people. The same way there's no one singular narrative of white people or Asian people or Hispanic people. There's no one narrative. And when Hollywood and the media and different avenues like it only create one face for one race, it allows for the effect of, it allows for sorry, wow guys, I'm trying to remain calm and talk about this, and it really gets my blood boiling to really think about this stuff, because as a young girl, I remember having really bad mental complexes about myself, because when I was younger, I didn't even see girls like me on screen, really. And, you know, I'm not even the lightest of lights, but, you know, apparently to my friends and family, thanks guys, I would be considered light-skinned, and I didn't even grow up seeing girls like me on screen. And if that has created years of self-loathing, of self-esteem issues, of everything in between that young girls already have to deal with on their own. They already have to deal with them. I can't imagine what it would be like, how as now I'm a 23-year-old still not seeing enough of my type of representation. I couldn't imagine that. I couldn't imagine that. And you know what? While I was going to strictly stick to, you know, African Americans and Africans, just black people in general, I actually want to extend this out to the LGBTQ community as well. They don't get nearly enough representation on anything. I have actually heard some of the most medieval thinking when it comes to adding LGBTQ characters to shows and movies and comics, and honestly, it blows my mind that people can seriously still be so shut off mentally and just socially, really, in 2018. Like, someone that I know, actually, it's not one person. I have actually heard this a couple times now, where, you know, we'll be talking about like a movie, and it was Love, Simon. It was Love, Simon. So I was talking about, you know, I hadn't seen Love, Simon, but I was looking at the reactions that it was getting from a lot of my friends, a lot of from the LGBTQ community, allies alike too, because it was a movie that needed to be made. It was a movie about a kid who finds out his sexuality at the right time. It's not about his suicide. It's not about his demise. It's not about how he's closeted and scared away. It's a real life story about a young man who discovers his sexuality at the same age every other kid around him is discovering their sexuality. And the reason why this movie made such big waves was because that representation gave so many people the power and the knowledge to know that they are not alone, that they are not by themselves, that they actually matter. Because what you guys don't seem to understand is, and this is not just, you know, this is, I feel like actually not enough people understand this. The media drives our society. Like, it is literally as black and white as it gets there. That's it. The media pushes agendas, it pushes ideologies, it pushes everything out into the open that we consume, that we absorb, that we take in. And for people to say that, you know, having gay people in movies and TV shows and stuff is pushing an agenda down our throats, instead of looking at it as finally a group that has gone without representation finally has it, is mind-blowing to me. It's mind-blowing to me. It really is. A lot of the times, you know, I just feel like anytime I hear those arguments of, well, I don't get why this is such a big deal. If you have the privilege to say you don't understand why it's a big deal, then make it your job to understand why to some it's a big deal. Because I promise you, it's not always small, insignificant stuff that gets people upset. And to be honest, it's not even necessarily like catastrophic stuff that happens. It's the mere fact that there have been years upon years, generations upon generations that have had to live in hiding, that have had to live in shame, that have had to live in question of their identity because they don't see themselves being successful, being represented, being safe, being loved. That matters. These things matter. The reason why songs sell and books sell and everything we consume mentally sells is because we can envision ourselves in those places. And for a good majority of us, we've actually been able to have the ability to see what we would look like on screen in some way, shape, or form. So why is that not demanded? Why is that not allowed to be expected from other people? I don't understand that. Not saying that I don't love Amandla and I don't love actresses like Zoe Saldana, but and Zendaya even, but light-skinned women are not the only thing that make up black people. They're not the only thing that make up what a black face is supposed to look like. We are on a spectrum, and it is so diverse. It could literally, the world would stop. The world could stop. That it's insanely diverse. So to only put one face for LGBTQ members, for black people, for Asian people, I will even say it for white people, because for some reason, you guys think all blonde-haired, blue-eyed people need to be in the front and side of everything, and I don't get that. There is more to the spectrum of life of people than the four main types of things that we see on television and in movies and in books even. At the end of the day, the author of The Hate U Give made her a dark-skinned girl for a reason. So if we're going to make that into a movie adaptation, then it's only fair and it's only right that the representation be given, because it's a completely different story. Coming from the perspective of a dark-skinned girl versus a girl who could look like me. While I have dealt with my fair share of racism and discrimination as a 23-year-old living in this country, I can honestly say that I have never faced the type of discrimination that my darker friends have had, that my LGBTQ friends have had to face. That is a type of knowledge that once you know it, you can't, saying nothing makes you compliant. It makes the industry think it's okay, and this stuff is not okay. Equal representation should not be we'll talk about it later type thing. It's something that should be talked about now, because everyone deserves representation now. It's long overdue. It's very long overdue. So, you know, I guess I really just made this to state and to let you guys know that be aware of the privileges that you have when it comes to you watching a movie and being like, whoa. I guess the reason I really dig that is because I can see myself in it. And imagine what it would be like to know if someone, imagine this, guys. I want you to really just imagine this. Every time you think it's not a big deal why people are outraged about a certain race not getting representation or a certain group not getting representation, imagine a story written specifically about you. Imagine a story, an event, specifically about you. And then when they make that a movie adaptation, you're thinking, all right, I am this color, I am this way, and I am this way. So the main actor, at least the main idea of the film needs to portray this, this, and this. And instead of it being someone that looks like you, someone that can actually get people to relate to your story, it is a whole other race. It's a whole other group. Or it's an entirely different person that can't possibly connect your story to the audience. That's not downplaying their acting, but it's downplaying the fact that at the end of the day, we see and we take in what is there. So if the story is about a dark-skinned girl, it's the impact is not nearly as hard when I'm seeing someone who looks like me. Knowing that this struggle, knowing that these things, knowing that these issues would be handled and taken in a completely different way. It's inaccurate. It's completely inaccurate. And not even to be dramatic, but it's the same thing as rewriting history to suit the victor. You rewrite it to make it suit what you think is going to sell best and what you think people want to see. People want to see themselves. We want to see equal representation. We want to see all people feeling as though they matter. Because at this rate and in this age and in this time and this year, it's about time that be the fucking issue. It's about time that be the forefront of what is going on. Showing people that they matter. Showing the world that representation matters. Accurate representation matters. It shouldn't be 2018 and we still shouldn't be seeing kids who are killing themselves because they're being bullied about their skin color or they're being bullied about anything really. All because kids at a young age haven't seen the accurate representation that they're supposed to. And I'm not saying that that is the number one issue. Obviously, guys, there are other issues that play into all that. I am saying, though, considering kids specifically take in what they see, kids should accurately be seeing themselves represented. Every color, every shape, every nationality, every ethnicity, every group, everything should at least have something that they can say is an accurate representation of them on film, on book, on paper, on anything. And to go a step further, everyone deserves to see a success about someone that looks like them. Because believe it or not, it shapes minds, it shapes lives, and it shapes stories. It shapes the human collective that makes us all part of the same race, part of the same world. And for only some to get representation and only for some to care, that doesn't add to our harmony, and it certainly doesn't add to the collective. Instead, it takes away from it. It divides it. It creates animosity within communities. I can honestly say that colorism is so alive and well in the black, oh my gosh. I will at least say that as a 23-year-old, I've seen progress. I've seen at least a little bit of progress when it comes to colorism in the African American community, and I'm strictly talking about my personal situations. I won't speak for anyone else. But again, I can only say that from my perspective. How would I be able to know that as a dark-skinned girl? How would I know that as a member of the LGBTQ as opposed to being an ally? How could I possibly sit here and say things have gotten better when I haven't had to face the same discrimination as those that I'm claiming to help? We all need to do our part when it comes to allowing another group to have some limelight. It's okay to share, guys. I've heard so many times, and I'm sorry to say it again, but I really couldn't believe it. I've heard so many times. I've had friends who have openly talked about being members of the LGBTQ community, or openly talked about, wanting to date a black guy or date a black girl or do all this, and actually had the audacity to downplay why some would be outraged when there's a lack of their own representation in movies. Or my least favorite thing I've ever heard is when they have the audacity to sit there and say, well, I don't get why they're just trying to shove all this gay shit down our throats. Like, I don't understand. Or I don't understand why, black people are making this a big deal. Like, I mean, at least you have one in there. Like, I have heard some ludicrous statements about representation, and that alone is why it is so important. That alone is why it is so important. Because a lot of the misconceptions, a lot of the issues, a lot of the preconceived notions that people develop about groups and their characteristics come from the things that we see in our everyday media. Hence why it is such a big deal for so many groups to feel as though they are accurately represented. Because if for a lot of you that don't know this, that can cost some of us our lives. Not even being dramatic. I'm not even being remotely funny. A lack of representation or inaccurate representation can actually cost some of us our lives. And considering it has, it is way overdue that we finally get the representation and the accurate representation that we deserve. I will leave it at that, and I will cut this at 21 minutes. I'm so proud of myself. I kept it together. Thank you guys for coming back. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for subscribing. And I will see you next week. Go out there, change the world, and be something greater than you. Do something greater than you. Because I know that every single person that watches my videos is capable of it. I know you are. I love you guys. Peace.